Welcome, everyone, to this Professional Development Hour presentation brought to you proudly by the Atlanta Metro Chapter of the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers, an affiliate of the National Society of Professional Engineers. Before we begin, we'd like to let you know that any opinions presented tonight are solely the opinions of the presenter and not that of the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers, the National Society of Professional Engineers, or any other of its affiliates. We certainly hope you will enjoy tonight's presentation, so sit back and relax. And on with the show.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started with the program, but before we do that, I'm going to make an announcement. I'd like to make an announcement and recognize a new member to the profession. Caleb, just passed his PE exam. Congratulations. All right, before we get going, I'd like to ask you to please silence your phones, number one. Number two, make sure that you sign the sign-in sheet. We have a door prize. Before we get started. And so on to our presentation. The program today is going to be on engineering ethics, and it's a perspective from a state agency. Our presenter today is Patrick Allen. He's a construction division director for the Georgia Department of Transportation. And let's give Patrick a warm welcome.
All right, am I good? Mic wise, we're good? Okay. All right, I'll try to project here. I'm usually not a very loud speaker, but it's a good thing we've got kind of a small room and we're nice and cozy here. So good evening. Thank y'all for having me. I'm Patrick Allen with the Georgia Department of Transportation. For about the last year, I've been the Division Director of Construction. I'll talk a little bit about what that means here in just a second. But over the last about 19 years, I started in 2005 in the traffic engineering section with GDOT. So again, over just about 20 years, February will be my my anniversary for 20 years at the department. I've done a lot of different jobs, but just last year I've been the Division Director for Construction. So I'm going to talk to you guys about ethics a little bit. You know, I look around the room and it's like, wow, should I be giving the instruction or giving the lesson about ethics? I'm sure you guys can kind of tell me what the regs say backwards and forward, but we're going to have hopefully a conversation. You know, again, I welcome any questions or dialogue. You know, again, I'll give my opinion and just kind of my perspective from state agency, and I'll talk a little bit about engineering ethics, but probably more so on the traditional sense of ethics. Again, being a public agent, public servant, there are a lot of pitfalls and things we've got to look out for in terms of ethics. So with that, we'll get into it. One of my favorite characters, I see a lot of smiles. Familiarize yourself with Wile E. Coyote, which, you know, Wile E. Coyote was a genius, right? But he didn't always have a super genius, right? But he didn't always have the best of intentions, right? His intention was, hey, I need to get this road runner in my belly, right? You know, and I don't know if he still hasn't caught the road runner, but at the end of the day, you know, you can be as smart as you need to be, have as many ideas as you want to be, but if they're not well intentioned, then it's not going to be to the good benefit of the public. You know, there's a good thing that Wile E. Coyote didn't have to deal with a lot of truck traffic and things like that as he's trying to catch the road runner, and things are blowing up and failing, but he didn't give up. You know, I appreciate him for his stick-to-itiveness and his ability to keep trying, right?
His approach to tunnel design was odd.
It was a little odd, right?
You mean where he painted against the rock?
But again, a great engineering mind, and I'll just, you know, we can all think of a handful of engineering disasters that you know, they don't happen immediately. Usually it's something that happened years before, and over time, that flaw, that misstep, whatever it is, it shows itself. But I did kind of pick one to highlight, the levee system in New Orleans, right? Everybody remembers Hurricane Katrina, and again, they designed it, not saying they did anything wrong or unethical, but there was sort of a systemic failure that happened there. You know, there were some things that they kind of overlooked, and boom, you get a storm of a lifetime, and you flood the city of New Orleans, and history's changed forever. So again, when you think about ethics, it's those little things, you know, it's those systemic things that you do. You know, you don't necessarily think about it, right, wrong, or indifferent until something happens, and then you have to adjust. So again, just want to use that to kind of set the stage. And in terms of a roadmap for tonight, I'll talk a little bit about the GDOT agency from a high level. You know, I know there's not a lot of transportation folks in the room, so figured there would be some benefit to just kind of understand how we work as an agency. I'll get into some engineering ethics. You know, anybody read their code of ethics recently? Show of hands if you read it in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, okay, all right, good deal. Me too, right? Yeah, as I was preparing for this. But again, it's one of those things that, you know, you think about ethics and for most everybody in the room, it's just the right thing to do, but you have to be reminded what those right things are, right? And just to keep yourself in check, it's like, hey, okay, I'm still in the right direction and I'm directing my folks in the right direction. And then I'll talk a little bit about the future, right? So ethics, moral values, those things still matter, but the way we're doing business is changing, so we may have to adjust some of the way we do things to accommodate for the future. So this is the org chart for GDOT. You know, there's not 4,000 slots on here, but GDOT is an organization of about 4,000 people. At the top is the people, the citizens of Georgia, the governor or General Assembly, and then our transportation board and our commissioner on down. But where I reside is in this little section right here, right? And you probably can't see that, but it's our chief engineer, Meg Perkle. She is our chief engineer for the department. Her signature goes on every set of plans that go out of the door, right? Does she get a chance to look at every single detail of every single plan? Not a chance, right? So all of these people, you told me not to touch the screen, but I'm right here in Division of Construction, and then on the sort of the left side, that's our Division of Engineering. We have a Director of Engineering that handles Office of Environmental, roadway design, bridge design. Y'all spoke with Don Diggerman maybe last month, 2 months ago, but he's in that engineering chain. We have our Office of Design Policy and Support and our right-of-way office as well under engineering. And then you move over to the construction side, that's where I run that division. So my offices that I'm responsible for are our State Construction Office, which handles all of our construction admin, Office of Materials and Testing. So again, that's the quality assurance piece, asphalt testing, concrete testing, soils testing. And I have our construction bidding administration. Again, those are the folks that put all of our contracts together before they go out for bid for letting every month. You know, we have a letting, projects hit the street every month. We try to target about $100 million worth of projects every single month that we're putting out in the street. You know, we're about a $4.5 billion agency. Again, that's a tremendous amount of funding that goes through us when you combine state funds and federal funds. And again, that's from mowing grass all the way to building bridges, you know, maintaining and construction and all that. So that's kind of a high level. The other two divisions on this side is our program delivery. They're getting the projects out of the door. And then one of the bigger ones right here is our Division of P3, Public-Private Partnership. Again, that's something a little bit new, but it's allowed us to deliver projects like the 285-400 interchange, the I-20 at 285 interchange, and then the I-20 on the east and west side interchanges are all P3 projects. Again, big design, build, finance. So we've got an entire division dedicated to delivering those projects and a sea of consultants to help us out doing those things. So again, tying that back to ethics, there's a lot of controls and things in place to make sure that we're hitting our marks from a safety standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, and making sure we're following all of our federal and state rules and regulations. All right, so as I mentioned, just wanted to show this. Again, I'm guessing most everybody in here has stamped a set of plans. You know, you own that set of plans. You are the engineer of record. You're responsible for that. But in this case, we've got our program delivery administrator, our chief engineer here, Meg Perkle. But then also notice that, right? So when we have a consultant that designs plans, which about 85% of our plans are designed by consultants. Again, they have an accountability as well. So if something happens, you know, first is department, and then next, if there's errors and omissions, we can go back and get with that consultant to figure out what happened there. So again, from an ethical standpoint, it's got to be the agency as the leader and the consultants also buying into doing the right thing all the time. And then at the end of the day, the contractors as well. So again, they've got to take those set of plans and in an ethical fashion, put it on the ground, make sure that it's in accordance with the plan and ultimately safe for the traveling public. All right, so Georgia DOT, our mission is simple, right? Or our vision is simple, right? boost Georgia's competitiveness via leadership in transportation. Did you know that Georgia was the #1 state to do business in the country? 11 years in a row this year. So again, I get a special award and make sure every time I present something, I got to say that, you know. So again, we're on that. We're in that wheel. You know, we see Governor Kemp's vision for, you know, again, a business-friendly state, doing our part. Transportation, you know, again, look at the Hyundai plant down in Bryan County. Again, getting those vehicles or any kind of exports from the port through Atlanta to the rest of the continental United States is very important. You know, so the roadway network, the airport, the train systems, all of that is really critical. So again, our mission is to deliver a transportation system, not a roadway network, right? A transportation system, all modes included. Focus on.
Interested in reading.
Yeah.
Yes. I was very interested a few weeks ago reading a document. I'd say it's probably 20, 30 years old now, but it focuses on the history and the accomplishments of GDOT in terms of building the interstate network in this state. And it went back into the 50s of, you know, stuff you wouldn't recognize today. But it also showed their use of technology in the early days, like they were the first state DOT to buy an aircraft and get stereo optic images of the areas where they needed to work. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. You know, you don't need it now probably as much, but we're talking of 50s and 60s perspective of how they needed to build roads. And apparently with cooperation from the legislative side, we were able to build the core 5 interstates in the state, which are what, 820, 85, 75, 16, and 95. In the eastern part of the state, those are the core roads.
Right.
It's quite interesting how they were able to get by being prudent, and they learned how to gain Washington and get more money than maybe they should have. And I'm like, good.
Yeah. So I won't speak to the gain Washington piece, but we focus, just like the vision says, on being innovative, and again, taking that same mentality, right? You know, if you went and polled all the DOTs across the country, you know, we're held in high esteem. You know, Georgia, Florida, Texas, California, like we're the top tier DOTs, not only from a funding standpoint, but just how we're able to do things and how we take a spirit of collaboration with our contracting industry, with our suppliers, our material producers. Again, everybody's sort of rolling in the same direction. And again, it's, you know, I appreciate where we are because folks can kind of rally around transportation no matter what their beliefs, political or otherwise, are. Transportation makes sense and it works for, you know, putting meals on the table. You know, again, last thing you want to do is not be able to get home to get your kid from daycare, you know, because of traffic jam or something like that. So again, we're still taking that innovative focus and trying to continue to push and move forward and keep Georgia the best. So the other things, has anybody touched anything highway related from an engineering standpoint? Lighting, okay. And I asked that because do any of these documents across the bottom look familiar to anybody? A little bit, okay. Probably the most popular one and the one that you see the most is the second one, the manual on uniform traffic control devices. Again, that's right. So if you've driven on the highway, you know, from Georgia to Missouri to California, all of the signs, all of the markers look exactly the same. And again, we all follow that manual, uniform traffic control devices, even Puerto Rico, Alaska, everywhere, you know, it's, again, that's sort of the one that kind of ties everything together. The one on the left is we call it the Green Book. Again, that's the one that governs designs that tells you that, you know, a lane's got to be between 10 and 12 feet wide, you know, a shoulder needs to be this or that, or, you know, a lot of shoulds, a lot of shalls, and a lot of musts as well. So again, those are our guiding principles that feed these two documents on the left, which is our GDOT design manual, again, for our designers, and then our specifications, again. So all of these design manuals go into that package. We give it over to the contractor, and they've got to follow the specifications to make sure it gets built in accordance with what the engineer intended. You know, and again, as we started transitioning to that ethics conversation, right? We as good engineers, we design a lot of things with good intentions, right? And then the contractor shows up and says, well, Mr. Engineer, this won't work. It's like, well, yes, it will. You know, you got to have a conversation, right? Look at the specs, look at what was intended, and look at what's possible. You know, we have a lot of conversations around that too. It's like, well, all right, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the contractor's like, well, I understand what you intended. This is what I need to do. Somebody's got to make a decision, right? And that decision's got to be safe. It's got to be economical. And it's got to be ethical, right? So again, that's where the rubber starts to meet the road when you transition from design guides to specifications. All right, so here we go. All right, everybody had their evening coffee, awake, ready to go. All right, so let's talk about ethics, right? You know, I found a sign, you know, that's values, right? Really, that's your ethics, your morals, that's your guiding principles, right? It's those principles that govern a person's behavior of conducting an activity. You know, as your parents tell you, I'm not so concerned about what you're doing when I'm watching you. It's what you're doing when I'm not watching, right? Those are those guiding principles that we all need to live by, right? Moral correctness, specified conduct, right? Ethics are rules that help guide your actions into appropriate and effective behaviors in your day-to-day life. Norms of human behavior, right? This all sounds easy. You know, it's very, very simple, right? And as engineers, everything we do is simple, right? We do well at doing the easy stuff, right? Again, getting back to the code of ethics, you know, right off the NSPE webpage. You know, again, this aligns with, you know, I looked at the board rules not too long ago too. So again, there's consistency and synergy there, right? If you look at the board rules, you look at this, you know, first things first, right? Hold paramount the safety, health, and the welfare of the public. Should go without saying. You know, these are the things that you learn in school, and me as a civil engineer, that's what attracted me to civil, right? It's all things in the built environment, you know. I get an opportunity to do bridges, roads, you know, any of those things, construction, you know, it's all around me, you know. So my wife's like, can you stop working? It's like, no, I'm driving down the road and it's like, that needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. You know, that's what excited me about the profession. You know, I get to do it, I get to live it every single day. And I get to pour it into my kids. I was telling Roger, I got 3 young boys, and maybe one of them will be an engineer, but they all understand how traffic signals work. They all, you know, my little 3-year-old is like, Daddy, it's time to go. You know, you need to go. I'm like, I can't go yet. You know, so they're learning that safety and the aspect and the rules of the road, again, because that's what I do when I drive. You know, I re-engineer everything. You know, so again, that's what's neat about being a civil engineer, but then also, you know, having that focus on safety, health, and the welfare of the public. Performance services in the area of their competence, right? So I guess I'll kind of pause there and just kind of get your feedback. What does competence really mean? Anybody want to give an opinion? You know, I don't need an official definition, but in the context of performance services only in their areas of competence.
So what you're telling me is, for me as an electrical engineer, I should not be the person designing the roads and the bridges.
Okay. I mean, well, I'm not suggesting that, you know, like, but I would say that as an electrical engineer, you may have a certain skill set that will allow you to do that with some studying and with some training and working under the right person, right?
I'm looking at having to redesign my deck that's got dry rot. I am confident in my ability to calculate the stresses and the wood beams that I will use, the joists.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have no knowledge about concrete foundations for the footers.
There you go. So we'll call that partial competency, right? And I'm looking at Bill, because if you go out there and come up with a set of plans and you go build your deck and it falls down, guess who's coming after you? If somebody gets hurt. But again, competence, that's an important word, right? And from a GDOT perspective, right, we are 3,900 and some change strong, a lot of engineers, but a lot of engineers that know how to do multiple things, right? And I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't go try to design a bridge, but I also wouldn't say that I'm incompetent in bridge design either, because I've spent some time learning it, doing it, but I didn't pick that as my profession. You know, again, my basis is more traffic engineering. If we want to talk about studies and intersection design, you know, I'm an expert in that, but I dabble in a lot of things. So again, I'm not going to stamp a set of bridge plans, but I could participate and maybe be, you know, somebody on the team that does the bridge design work. You know, so again, that word competence, got to pay close attention to that, you know, because some people will say, well, this is not what I do, I'm not touching that at all. But if you're, you know, a degreed engineer, you could be capable and not necessarily have full competence in a certain subject area. So I thought that was important. Issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner. again, society these days, we won't have any issues with objective and truth and public comments, right? No, that's not a thing. Act for each employer or client as faithful agents or trustees, right? Avoid deceptive acts. None of that gets complicated, right? I mean, it depends on who your client is, right? Some clients are tougher than others, so you just got to have the ability to stand up and say, hey, that's not the right thing to do, or if you want to do that, find yourself another engineer, right? Again, that's where you got to go. Doing the right thing doesn't automatically bring success, but compromising ethics always leads to failure. I thought that was a pretty good quote that I found. All right, so I think I violated every rule of PowerPoint presenting, but there's only one way to communicate this. I mean, unless you open the Secretary of State, the BLS rules. I mean, I wanted to copy it verbatim, because that's just how it is. Again, we're not going to stand here and read everything, but again, ethics is a big deal, right? And the code of conduct, again, OCGA 4315-6. Again, who wants to be civilly penalized or criminally penalized for not doing the right thing? So again, I think as I look at, we've got a new young professional engineer. Hopefully you've memorized this and you're studying this, but because it matters, Again, when you put that new seal that you're going to get, when you put it on a set of plans, it makes a difference. Yes, sir.
Actually, number 3 is probably one of the most important parts.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, go ahead. We'll let you elaborate.
I already memorized it.
Yeah. So, again, we talked about competence, right? And we talked about Wile E. Coyote, right? So if Wile E. Coyote did something crazy out here,
He's illiterate.
well, he's illiterate, but we're literate, and if we saw him out here doing something unsafe or unethical, it's our duty to turn him in, right? So again, just going back to that example, so we've got to police our own industry. If you knowingly knowing somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, it's our duty to ensure that gets reported and it doesn't jeopardize the again, health and safety and public welfare, right? Fundamentally, you got to remember those things again, and keeping everybody on their P's and Q's. And again, that's even outside of your particular competency area. If you recognize wrong, you got to say something, and let BLS let them investigate and come to a decision on whether your hunch or your instinct was right. But again, it's your duty to bring attention to it. So again, appreciate that. Number 3 is really really important. Again, representing yourself in an honest way. All right, so again, more board rules, right? Again, we've got a set of board rules at GDOT as well. So it's kind of fascinating looking back at these again. It's like, wow, I've actually participated in the process of rewriting a couple of rules. I think I've got a couple of things that are posted for public comment right now. So it's pretty neat that there is synergy amongst state agencies as well. But again, rules of practice: the engineer or land surveyor shall perform services only in the areas of his or her competence. The engineer or land surveyor shall undertake to perform engineering or land surveying assignments only when qualified by education or experience, right, in a specific technical field of professional engineering and land surveying involved. So again, education and experience. And again, we won't go too far into this, but the engineer or land surveyor may accept an assignment requiring educational experience outside of his own field of competence. We just kind of talked about that a minute ago, but only to the extent that his or her services are restricted to those phases of the project which are qualified. So again, won't claim to be a bridge expert, but that's not to say that I can't have input on a bridge project. All right, so again, rules 4, 5, and 6, professional engineer who is not the engineer of record. So again, this really falls on kind of how we work. Our chief engineer is signing off on things, but may not be the engineer of record for every single project. All right, so number 6 is also a big one, right? Direct supervisory control. I'd like to get y'all's opinion. What does that mean? What does that entail? How would you define it? Anybody?
You don't want me to do this.
Yes, go ahead, boss. Go ahead, boss.
If you read the law, direct supervisory control is daily supervision. I'm Bill Loke. I am the electrical representative on the PEI. But we are, as the board, we're starting to take a look at this because we know that the engineering world is changing and we have to change with it.
Yep.
So we will probably be talking with GDOT and get some thoughts from y'all as to how you do this.
Yep.
But you still have to supervise, you still have to mentor the young engineers. Whether you do it looking over their shoulder or if they're in another state, you've got to come up with a method that works.
Right.
So
Right.
that you do train good young engineers.
Right. So, and I'll speak to that, and like we'll look forward to the bigger conversation. But I'm giving Patrick's opinion, not GDOT's perspective necessarily. You know, we have a lot of positions that require PE licensure. You know, again, and then we have sort of tracks to lead up to those positions. So, again, there is that mentorship, those conversations along the way, even up to the chief engineer's perspective or position. You know, so we're having that dialogue. We have our professional engineers development program where our engineers go and they learn a lot about the department, but then they also bog down in their area, you know, so if they want to be a geotech or a pavement engineer, again, they can get really seasoned in that, and that becomes their sort of focus when they get ready to go take the test. But they've also done construction, they've done bridge, they've done roadway design, they've done traffic engineering, so they get basically a more holistic view of how the transportation world works, you know, so again, that's sort of our calling card, you know, and our chief engineer has a group, we call it engineering services, right, but they're sort of the engineering police, for lack of a better term, you know, so again, they're sort of a representative for GDOT, but they review every single set of plans, provide comments to make sure for that consistency and things like that. But like I said, we're looking forward to that dialogue, and this has been a big deal for us, you know, even with, you know, the stamping of the plans, what was known as a record plan, right? Like a hand set of plans versus a PDF, you know, again, that's a big deal. And I've got a couple of slides toward the end where we'll talk about where we're headed with digital delivery, right? So you want to even have a PDF or a hand set of plans, you'll have a model, and that is the design, right? You know, so again, who's going to be in charge, who's going to be the engineer of record. You can't really see it, but I tried to highlight a few pieces in there, but like I said, it is very specific about having the same address and that kind of thing, which again, we just don't, I mean, we don't work like that now. We haven't worked like that in a very, very, very long time. We have a lot of designs that are done by consultants. We have a lot of designs that are done by some of our field districts. You know, our chief engineer sits in Atlanta, but we've got 7 district offices, right, all around the state of Georgia, you know, from the southeast corner in Jessup to the northwest corner up in Cartersville. So again, it's going to be a very big topic, you know, so we're looking forward to it. All right, so getting into ethics specifically within the board rules, again, just 2 bullet points there. The engineer or land surveyor shall associate only with reputable persons or organizations. So everybody in here is reputable, right? Yeah. And this is a reputable organization, right? All right, good. I don't have to leave. All right. But again, it's about projecting that you're doing the right thing, right? You don't want to be out socializing with some group that is known to not do good work or something like that, because, you know, you can be guilty by association. You know, that is a real thing. If the engineer or land surveyor has knowledge or reason to believe another person or firm may be in violation with any of these provisions of OCGA 4315, promptly present such information to Bill. So again, we have a duty. What is it? You know, Marta, see something, say something, right? That is a real thing. All right, so to drill it all home, right? Governor Kemp, 2021, he puts out an executive order, right? Because he is a big time ethics guy, right? You know, ethics is one of his things. So on top of, as engineers, we've already have the Code of Ethics, NSPE, we've got the board rules, we've got our own internal GDOT rules of things that we should and should not do from an ethical perspective, but the governor comes and doubles down for every state organization, right? So now, every year, we've got to go through sort of a training, fill out a form. I will not, I shall not, I do this, and you sign it, right? You sign the ethical code of conduct for the state of Georgia for the governor, right? So again, that's not so much about engineering ethics, whether it should be 3 feet versus 5 feet. That's about doing the right thing, not associating with those organizations, not taking, bribes or whatever it is, So again, code of conduct is a big deal, and zero tolerance, right? If you have an ethics violation or sexual harassment or something like that, you can forget about it, You can recover for some things, but he's kind of laid the law down like these are the things I will not tolerate. So again, just want to give a little bit of additional context there. So from an ethics standpoint, if there's a agency you're looking at to figure out like, are those guys doing the right thing? Absolutely, we're doing the right thing, right? And again, from our leadership on down, from Commissioner McMurray down to our equipment operators, again, the expectation is to do the right thing, and if you're not, you're out of there. All right, so conflict of interest. Won't spend too much time on this, but y'all know the drill, right? I'm the director of construction for GDOT. Guess who I get to talk to a lot? Contractors, right? Anybody ever had to deal with contractors? I just want to get it done a lot of times, right? They don't care. Whatever you take, like, hey, yep, if it keeps my project going and it saves me $1, they're willing to have a conversation, right? But for me, I've got to be especially careful with the contracting industry and with some of our industry folks, right? Everybody's got something that works better than the last thing, right? Everybody's got something that's intended to make a profit, or they just want to sell it, right? Once they get a stamp of approval from GDOT, chances are they can sell that product to any local government, any county, any city in the state of Georgia, or beyond, because of our reputation and because of our rigorous process for approval for different products. So again, that conflict of interest is a real deal. And as you get to certain positions within the state government, again, it becomes that heat gets a little hotter and a little hotter because everybody has a need, right? And they want to talk to somebody to kind of get things going. So again, personally, I take this one very serious, and I make sure that, even if I'm having conversations with people and, it doesn't give off that I'm having favorites or anything like that. Again, everybody gets the same opportunity, same dialogue, same treatment on the project. Again, my focus is get the project delivered. It's not to pick winners or losers in the contract industry or design industry. We want to do what's in the best interest of the project, the public, again, that public and safety. All right, so decision making, right? Show of hands if you've ever designed a perfect set of plans. No? Show of hands if you ever had a project where you had unlimited time, unlimited money. Show me a project where all the answers were in your design guide. Doesn't exist, right? So as engineers, we get paid to think, and that's, talk about training young engineers, right? Where is it? Like, well, sorry, son or ma'am, it's not in the book, right? You're gonna have to think this one out. This is bring your brain to work day to day, right? So we live in the middle, right? Standards, data, and experience. There's a lot of experience in this room, myself included, right? And what my philosophy has been with the new generation coming up is like, hey, look, I can train you how to read that book. You can learn that in 6 months. What you can't get is this part, right? So within the first 6, 8, 9 months, I need you to learn these things, and then we'll focus on telling you why we didn't do this or why we did do that or why it didn't work, and maybe it works this time, but you need to change that. So again, I like the term it microwaving engineers, right? When you come in, you're gonna learn the green book, you're gonna learn the spec book, you're gonna learn the MUTCD, and then we'll work on coaching you up on the rest. Again, so that engineer, it doesn't, in my opinion, again, my opinion, it doesn't take 10 years to learn anything that we have to do, right? It depends on how you train it. You can give a little bit at a time to where, oh yeah, you've been here for 10 years now, you're really good at doing this, but these kids are smart. You just dump it on them and make them learn it, and then you can build the rest. We got a room full of mentors in here again. So again, that engineering judgment, that's where we live in making decisions, and our young engineers have got to understand, it's a triangle on the screen, but I like to use a box, right? They got to understand how big their box is, when they're getting close to the edge and understand when they can get just outside, and if they're getting a little further outside, you need to pick up the phone and call somebody of responsible charge to help you make that decision, right? So again, I think anybody, I get a lot of head nodding, but I think that's pretty fair. And again, just really thinking about it from a ethical standpoint and from a quality and safety standpoint. All right, so here's another test. I saw y'all passing the mic around. So any project, right? Who can tell me, and I'll just kind of give it away a little bit, but the three most important things in project management.
I'm not quite sure if this is, what you're looking for, but the three legs of the stool, scope, schedule, and budget.
There you go. Uh-oh, went the wrong way. So time, scope, budget.
I learned one more thing.
What's that?
Determining at the three legs of the stool, the seat of the stool is the quality of the project.
All right, get that man a piece of sweet potato pie. So you hit the nail on the head, exactly where I was going, right? So scope, schedule, budget, or time, schedule, budget, however you want to look, time, scope, budget, as it's shown on the screen. Which one of those is the most important? I think it depends, right? I mean, because your client's going to come in and say, I need this in 2 weeks. Like, okay, I can do it in 2 weeks, but I'm not going to sleep, so I got to charge you extra, right? So it's going to be expensive, right? So faster means more expensive, right? Or less scope, right? So you've got to kind of balance that stool, right? It gets a little rocky, but if you lose sight of quality, then it doesn't matter, right? So from an ethical standpoint, we've as engineers got to learn how to tell people no, or yes, but, it's going to take us longer, it's going to cost us more, or we got to add these things to the scope. And the owner's got to make the decision, yes, sir.
In marketing, they teach that quality is not determined by the supplier, but by the user or the consumer. Does it meet their expectations of the constellation of features and cost?
Well, and that's a good point too, and a good perspective. And we as an agency, you gave us kudos about how we've done things very well. But there's places where, as an industry as a whole, if you look at the bipartisan infrastructure law, right, there was a whole section in there about reconnecting communities where back in the 50s and 60s when we built the interstates, we just kind of ran through some communities and separated them. So now we're bringing those back together. And the piece I think that we missed that we're starting to bring back to the conversation now is the end user. How do they perceive it? For us, it's like, hey, we got a brand new interstate, 6 lanes. We can get a truck from, Memphis to Savannah in a day and a half. Like we've done a good job. But the people in between are kind of like, wow, I can't get across the street to the store I used to go to, or the store is gone. So again, that end user piece is really important. Again, we talk about engineering ethics and ethics generally. That's the piece of it that we've got to be more sensitive to as engineers. Like, how does that end user perceive it? Again, no matter how long it took, no matter how long it cost, or how much it cost, or what we had to add to the project to get it done. So again, it's very key from an ethical standpoint that we focus. And for us as a department, we don't always have the luxury of time, but of those 3 things, that's the one that we can kind of lean on. Again, if we get it just right, nobody's worried so much about how long it took, or it's like, man, 285-400 flows well, but it was, a little over budget and a little over time. But people are forgiven because the output, again, is pretty good. Again, so for us, we're never going to sacrifice that quality piece. We may skirt the edges on some of those policy decisions, like, hey, does it have to be 2 feet or does it have to be 4 feet? All right, let's do 3 and keep moving, right? Again, we'll make those decisions. It won't be unsafe, but it's a decision that keeps us moving forward. And again, we haven't sacrificed quality. So again, that quality piece, that seat of the stool, is absolutely the most important of those 4 triangles on that screen. And we pull the other 3 in equal directions to make sure that stool doesn't fall over. So again, I think it's about keeping the stool balanced versus having one of those things override the other, again. All right, so I guess we're doing pretty good on time. All right. All right, so moving to the future. And so I borrowed these slides from one of my road design cohorts. So I'm still within my competence bubble, but I'm right at the edge, about to poke my hand out of it, so. But again, so all I'm saying here is that we're headed towards the future. And again, 3D modeling, 3D design, giving the contractor a model, go programming in the equipment in the motor grader, turn the machine on and let it go. We're not there yet, but that's where we're headed, right? So we've been working on this, and I'll show a slide in just a second about how long it's taken us just to get to the point that we are right now. And not just Georgia DOT, but every state across the country in some way, shape, or form is working on digital delivery again. Expediting that delivery process and just saying, hey, contractor, we don't need a big set of plans, just go. So again, we've got a couple of pilot projects that we worked on. Again, in the ethics piece of this, who's responsible? What if somebody tweaked one element of that model and you hadn't scrubbed the whole thing to determine that one little thing was changed? Again, we've got to put all those protocols in place from a legal and ethical standpoint to make sure that the end user does not suffer for something that we did or didn't do. Again, additional design requirements, attributes, and then we talk about training, right? So you've got engineers that are coming in right now, like there was, and I won't, there are probably people that remember the days before computers, right? And being on that edge between the slide rule and MicroStation or something like that, right? So we're almost at that edge again, but we're talking about MicroStation, digital design, getting into open roads, so where, these kids will come and sit in a computer screen and it won't be a flat set of plans, a plan view. They'll be spinning the entire model around. It's like, oh, here's the bridge, here's this, or even better, walk out to the job site and put on a set of goggles and look at the project, again. So that's where we are. We're at kind of like that turning point again, where we're getting ready to change the way we deliver construction projects. Our contractors right now, they are training kids in high school using simulators, right? So you get out of fifth period, then you go to your class, shop class or whatever, you go in and you jump in the Caterpillar. It's like, hey, I want to learn about the excavator today. You hit the button and the screen pops up. You got the controls and you're sitting in class and you're turning the excavator on a screen, right? Digging a hole, putting the dirt in the bucket. So again, that's what these kids are used to, and that's where we're about to be from an engineering standpoint. So again, if we were to go back to engineering school today, we wouldn't recognize it, Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, the models that these kids be looking at through these 3D glasses, tell them how idiots are going to use what they're looking at?
No.
That's the problem.
That is the problem. That is the problem. So everything that I've just said, about safety and public welfare is the best we can do, right? Distracted driving, drinking and driving, whatever. Walking across the street at a non-signalized location. Can't control user behavior, right? Now, if we could figure that piece out, we'd be doing something, So we've designed it the best we could. We've got, it's a gold-plated bridge with nice guardrails and everything. Somebody's gonna hit the side of it, right? We can't control that, but we do have to educate not just the young engineers, but even myself. Is like, again, getting back to that user part. It's like, well, why are people crossing the street right here? We've had, for example, 3 crashes in the last week with somebody walking across the street. It's like, oh, there's a school right here and there's a store on the other side, and the kids want to go out and get candy. So what can we do? Put some kind of type of signalization there, or hey, we've got, a lot of DUIs in this location. Like, oh yeah, there's a liquor store next to a nightclub, next to something else, So again, we've got to be aware of the environment. And not saying that we would necessarily redesign anything, but you have that conversation with the local government planning and zoning and say, hey, look, we've got to stop doing these things. We're starting to contribute unknowingly to certain situations. Again, speed, right? Anybody driven on the downtown connector at, past 9 o'clock at night? Yeah. I mean, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 14 lanes, moving at 20 miles per hour. Fast forward 4 hours in the evening, it's the Autobahn. right? A lot of room for disaster. So again, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but again, as engineers, we think that, or I won't say we think, but we have a tendency that more capacity, more throughput is the answer, but we're starting to kind of rethink it and say, hey, look, we need to design a road based on the speed the outcome that we want. So if we want to have a boulevard type sense with big wide sidewalks and trees, let's do that. And naturally people will kind of slow down and people will feel comfortable walking and things like that. So again, we're starting to change that. And that's not to say that every road will be like that, but again, it's considering the community, considering the usage, and it'll look a little different than what you're saying. It won't be your big wide, 40-foot median with 2 lanes in each direction like that. Those days are dwindling because we're taking a more account of how people need to use that roadway again. So it's not about getting there the fastest, it's about getting there faster, more consistently, if that makes sense. So again, if it's 35 miles per hour, it's going to take you 5 minutes to get from X to Z. You can bet on it 5 minutes, and if you get lucky one day and it takes you 3 minutes, congratulations, but we don't need it taking 5 minutes one day, 8 minutes the next day, an hour the next day. So again, it's about that consistency and performance. Yes, sir.
I might point out, Houston's got I-10 down there with 26 lanes, and they ain't solved the problem yet.
Ain't solved it yet.
26 lanes.
13 each way?
13 each way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. And you can land a 767 on that, All right, so all right, so just real quick on this, again, we started our digital delivery journey back in 2018 and 2025, right? We're getting ready to put out some guidelines, not a policy or anything. So again, that seems like a long time, but we're taking a very concerted effort to make sure we get it as right as possible. Again, it won't be perfect. We're always going to sharpen the saw, but it's taking a little while to get to where we want to be on that. And just a quick look, again, if you've ever looked at a set of roadways, set of plans, a lot of times you're looking at it from the top down, and then you've got to pull out what's called cross sections to look at each one of these individual lines to see how that road is, how the cross slope is, how do you need a wall here, how tall is that slope, and that kind of thing. But this will end up being the plans of the future, where you just get in this thing and you just kind of turn it around, and it's like, well, I want to see what this sign foundation looks like over here, and you just tilt the drawing and it's right there. And to a point, you might even be able to look at the foundation, check out the utilities below ground, and look for any clash detections and things like that, which, again, the utility impacts tend to be a hindrance for our projects, but as we're refining this, as we're coordinating with the utility companies to get better inputs, they can incorporate their stuff in here too. It's like, okay, we need to move that sign foundation 5 feet this way to miss that water line, to miss those fiber optic lines and that kind of thing.
In the older days,
yes,
paper was the officialist document. You put a seal on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And the CAD programs now make a design, and the paper is almost a byproduct.
Yeah.
But yet, what is it that you're contracting to?
Well, we're still contracting the plans.
To the paper?
To the PDF.
Yeah.
The digital version, yeah.
That's how you freeze your baseline, right?
Right. Yep. Now again, when you talk about a model, does it freeze? Yeah. Does it kinda?
It's so complex, it's hard to, how are you going to present that at, in a negotiation at the table and negotiate a change?
Yeah.
But the design model is so complex compared with the PDFs or the paper plans. My question is, how would you, if you didn't have the baseline defined in PDF form, it would be very difficult to work from a model, I would think, in a change negotiation setting, for example.
Yeah. No, I mean, and those are what we're talking about is taking us so long to get just to where we are right now. I mean, that's a real conversation. So change orders, and then worse yet, say something happens on the back end, you got a tort claim, and you got to figure out what was intended versus what was built, and you're looking at a model, or a set of as-built.
My mind is, you're
less sophisticated subcontractors, your DDE,
Yeah.
ME, participants in the project.
Yeah.
That may not have sophisticated computer capabilities and design staff on board.
Yeah.
How does that work into these projects? Is the general contractor taking on some sort of a design guidance role or a design services role with subcontractors?
Yeah, they would need to. And again, so we like I said, we've taken an approach of being collaborative. So our Highway Contractor Association is at the table with us and trying to answer those exact questions. You know, so is it for, you know, John D. Woodward, whoever construction company, they might need a PDF. It's like, hey, look, or come sit in the trailer with us and let's go through this model so you know exactly, you know, how you, and walk them through their bid documents and things like that. And until they mature to the point to where, because I don't know when, but there's going to come a day when this is going to be it, you know, so they're going to have to sort of figure it out, and hopefully they've got enough work, enough equity to be able to buy the tools they need to be able to participate, you know. But we're very, very mindful of that, and we don't want to leave anybody by the wayside, but we also don't want to give them, you know, 20, 30 years to kind of catch up. You know, you need to, like, it's coming, and it's been coming for a while, you know, so, yeah.
This progress leads to another aspect that maybe the ethics codes haven't addressed, and the ethics requirement of communication.
Well, the ethics requirement of communication and the ethics requirement of documentation, right? So again, when you talk about those contacts, that oversight, right? You know, if you are asking the question of who's checked what, you know, you got to have a paper trail that says, you know, Patrick Allen, as a junior engineer EIT, I gave it to Mr. Bob, you know, on Wednesday. He checked it, he signed off. You know, you got to be able to kind of follow that trail back to that oversight, you know, again. So it wasn't necessarily that I was sitting in Bob's office all day, every day this week, but he checked in, you know, every couple of hours or whatever, we're at certain milestones. So we've got to make sure that we communicate and document that we communicate. You know, that's where we've got to get to.
Let me ask you a question about the design aspects of it. I know it's not your exact bailiwick.
Yeah.
But that design you just showed us, does it take into account that maybe 20 years from now, all vehicles traveling the public will be AVs? And that all you got to do is put a line down the middle there, and you can have 5 times the traffic of a single lane by the use of that, and make that a two-way?
Yeah.
And you'd have 5 times the traffic capacity for each lane.
So not necessarily from the capacity standpoint, but again, we talk about autonomous and connected vehicles, like again, the manufacturers have told us that signs and striping, right? Read a sign, read a line. That's going to be the most critical. So even for our new projects, you know, the MBTCD is we used to put 5-inch stripes on all of our roadways, right? Now we're going to a 6-inch stripe, which is not that much bigger, but it's a little bit bigger. But again, with AV in mind, you know, so we're going to a wider stripe. We're refreshing the striping on our existing roads more frequently for that reason as well. So again, bigger, brighter signs. You know, some of the companies, and I don't want to plug any specifically, but they're working with the manufacturers too to not only see the sign, but to read it, you know. You look at, anybody ever heard of Waymo? Anybody rode in a Waymo car? Phoenix, maybe?
I tried to get Waymo as a speaker. They said we don't have enough bandwidth.
Very good. Yeah. So their hub is right there at Coda by Georgia Tech between 5th and West Peach Street. But you know, again, I went to Phoenix for an event one time, and I called up the app. Waymo car shows up. I get in the back, no driver. You know, I program my phone to the radio system, and I'm listening to my music. Takes me all the way to the airport. No problem. You know, it's reading the signs, it's reading the signals, it's looking out for pedestrians, the wheels turning. Crazy, but signs and lines, you know, again, and it helps that Phoenix has more of a grid system. Like my opinion, I'm a little skeptical to see how it works here in Metro Atlanta, but as long as it's within a certain area, you know, if it's in that midtown, downtown area, maybe we're fine. As long as it doesn't get to, we were just talking about 5 points, but Marietta and Peachtree, like that intersection right there, we can't, like, that would be a tough one to navigate for a driverless vehicle. But again, to your question, we are considering AV, but not necessarily, you know, we're not gonna say that we're not gonna widen this road to 6 lanes because we're gonna have X percentage of AVs. We're gonna go ahead and widen it to 6 lanes. And if AV comes and we need to reduce capacity, maybe we get a bike, you know, maybe we do a road diet, we get bike lanes on both sides, or bus lanes or something like that, you know, so we can design it to what we need or what we will need for the next 25 years, and then kind of back into what the situation calls for at the time. So.
I was going to do a quick time check. We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think we're 8 o'clock. I
was going to ask you also, are you incorporating using block technology in your, especially around the documentation part of it and the tracking changes and things like that?
Blockchain, he's talking.
Blockchain, like as in Bitcoin blockchain?
No, well, the underlying thing.
Okay.
The underlying technology.
Not to my knowledge, but because of this digital delivery and asset management and quite frankly, artificial intelligence, right? You know, artificial intelligence reads whatever's there and gives you kind of an output. So we are taking a pretty measured approach of how we store documents, you know, how we're feeding information to our system, because once we get sophisticated enough to leverage AI, it's only going to be as good as what's there. You know, again, not just pulling from the World Wide Web, but if we want to, for example, you know, we want to handle our maintenance request. Somebody calls in, it's like, oh, my stop sign got knocked down or I got a pothole. Have a system that can go in and say, hey, we've got a crew. They can be there within a week. They can do this, they can do that. But that's only going to be as good as, is that crew available? What tools do they have? What policy can that system read to be able to respond? What plans do we have? What projects have we closed out? So again, we're being mindful because we know that this is coming. AI and being able to leverage it in a good way, in a productive way. Again, not just to do it because you say you're doing it, but actually make it useful. And I was going to kind of end on this too, where, you know, the GTA, Georgia Technology Authority, just sent out a memo. You know, it's like, hey, don't use any AI without calling us first. You know, again, because it, you know, and again, it's not saying that people are being malicious or anything or unethical. It's, hey, we don't necessarily know what we've got in front of us, you know, and we don't know if, as we put data into the system, these big programs, who else is using it? You know, somebody can tap into all of the design build documents, you know, and boom, there goes our P3 program. So again, the states actually kind of stepped up and said, hey, ho, before y'all are doing this, because I've got colleagues in other states that are pretty liberal in their use of AI and helping them put reports together and do all those types of things, you know. So it's the technology, it's ChatGPT. I don't know how to use it, I don't have it, but I saw somebody that's like, hey, simple scenario, we were writing it's a friend of mine, she writes poems. She was like, hey, write a haiku about transportation and butterflies and, you know, just random stuff. And within seconds, I mean, it was perfect prose, like the format was there. It's like, it is absolutely phenomenal, you know. And if you need to write a planning document on, you know, how do we fix a downtown connector? Do we need to cap it? Do we need to tunnel it? You ask enough questions, AI probably can do it for you, you know. So again, that's exciting and scary. And Mr. Bob was like, oh my God. But I mean, that's where we are, you know, again. So just, you know, figuring out best use cases, data sourcing, data management, asset management, and quality control. You know, those are the things that we got to figure out what we want and then try to leverage this going forward. So we are there, you know, just some snippets from that bulletin that came out from GTA, you know, again, only use them for their intended purposes. Again, that really kind of ties back to ethics, right? Ensure that AI tools are used in a manner consistent with the mission, values, and business objectives of your agency. And think, like, bring your brain to work, right? Use due diligence and critical thinking, right? A lot of people, you know, it's like, hey, it's there, you know. And, you know, you got your business plan for this company that you've been trying to start for the last 15 years, but you use AI and it's 2 sentences in there about puppies and butterflies. You know, you didn't read it, so you're, you know, so you give it to the bank and they're like, well, you know, I thought you were opening a a restaurant, like what is this about, So again, just being mindful of the tools and understanding it. And it's, the good thing is that the generation that's coming up, some days I feel like I'm part of that, and then I'm also starting to graduate, people calling me Mr. Allen and stuff like that, or I say, hey, I've been around for 20 years, like, well, wait a minute, what happened, So I'm hopeful that I'm in that sort of that bridge group to kind of understand a lot of you guys' language and the tactile, feeling, have a conversation versus just, I think, Roger, you used the engineer joke about the shoes and everything. I tell the engineers all the time, it's like, hey, it's important to understand the Pythagorean theorem, but can you explain it to your grandparents? Like that's the thing. Like don't forget about those soft skills, those communication tools, and that's where we got to get to. Again, bridging that gap between where we've been, why we stopped doing certain things, and what are potential pitfalls of, technology is great, but you got to use it in the right way. So. I'll end there. No, we're getting kind of late. And I guess if we got any final questions, comments, thoughts, criticisms.
About 3 or 4 slides ago, one of the questions on the slide was who signs the documents, who signs the model?
Right.
Who signs the model?
So I guess going back to where I started, it would be the engineer of record, so whatever firm that is. But again, if it's a GDOT project, our chief engineer's name is going to be in there too. So, she doesn't get a pass even though it's a model. So yeah, the engineer of record and the chief engineer will still be on there. So.
Okay. And then in terms of when you have multidisciplinary involvement in the project, which of course all your projects do, there's electrical designs for roadway lighting and signalization and all that kind of stuff. Maybe mechanical systems and tunnel,
right.
For example. Does the engineering record, the engineer of record, that's an overarching employee that's responsible for all disciplines, or does it have to be a person that's competent in the field of the discipline of the documents?
Yeah. So the chief engineer and the main roadway designer is kind of the overarching. They're going to sign the cover, but within that, so if you've got a specialty lighting plan or utility plan or subsurface utility engineering plan, the engineer that did those plans typically will have a stamp, and it'll be within that larger set of plans. So if you want to have a question about something specific lighting, and again, we don't do that a whole lot, but it happens, right? So we need a lighting professional, and that lighting professional will do that subset of the plan, section 38 or whatever it is, and boom, they got a stamp on it. Yep. So yes, the specialty items as required in the rule, those can be signed off on by the engineer that did that part of it. Yep. All right.
Big round of applause.
All right. Hey. Oh, wow.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jesus. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, everyone.
Thank y'all for having me.
Last thing to do, did everybody sign the sign sheet?
We hope you enjoyed this presentation given at one of the Atlanta Metro Chapter meetings of the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers, an affiliate of the National Society of Professional Engineers. To find out more about us or to join us, check us out at gspe.org.